Hey, Steve Lindsley, welcome back to my shop. It's been a while since I put up a YouTube video, but I've been working diligently all summer on a desk. My friend and coworker Lauren asked me to make a desk for her daughter Olivia. Olivia is going into the second grade this year. It's probably a little bit more desk than a second grader needs, but I'm sure she'll grow into it and get plenty of use out of it all the way through junior high school and high school. So when I decided to build a desk, I was decided I wanted to make it out of hard maple. Unfortunately, when I went to my hardwood dealer, they only had 6-quarter hard maple. They didn't have any 5-quarter, which is what I wanted. So I bought me a supply of this, and I've resawn it what I needed, and I have plenty of pieces of half-inch hard maple left over that I'll use on another project pretty soon, I'm sure. So let me show you a picture of the finished product. Okay, that's Olivia's desk. This video, I show you how I make it, so stay tuned and watch the video and you'll see how I made this nice desk for Olivia. Whenever someone asks me to build a project for them, first thing I ask them is to show me a picture of or example of what you want it to look like. Last thing I want to do is make a shaker table for someone and have them turn out that they're really what they wanted was arts and crafts, so that wouldn't be good. So when I was getting ready to make this desk, I asked Lauren, Olivia's mother, to find a picture of something that she liked, and she came up with this picture out of some catalog. And then the second question was, what do you like and what you don't like about it? So what Lauren didn't like was the fact that there was no panel here on the end, which was fine. I didn't particularly like that either. What I didn't like was the fact that it didn't have a leg back here on the back of this case. So I added a leg there, so that's basically 4 legs on that case. What we did like about it was the size, the overall look, the fact that it had a couple of drawers on the side with a bigger drawer on the bottom, and then this drawer at the top. So once I get an idea of what they want it to look like, I make myself a little sketch. Let me see if I can, probably need to adjust it so you can see a little bit better here. So I make myself just a hand-drawn sketch of the piece, throwing in some dimensions, 54 inches, 29 inches, 1 inch top, 52 inches overall, the base, and just throw some general dimensions in on it so I get an idea of what I want it to look like. This would have been a side view down here with the, it's 25 inches deep, the top's 6 inches wide. So that's a nice, front's got a 1 inch overhang. So I mean, it's just a general sketch of what it is I want it to look like. Once I do that, I usually make myself a drawing of some sort. Let me see, I might need to back up a little bit here on this and make it so you can actually see it. So you're not going to see it real well, I don't think, but we'll do the best we can do. So I make myself a sketch of the front view of the project. Let's see, I'm not real happy with the way that looks. Let's see if we can't. Yeah, that's a little bit better maybe. I make myself a front sketch. This is the top, the drawers. This is the scale. This was a 1/4 inch equals 1.5 inches. So scale drawing. A lot of people do these things in SketchUp. I'm not a SketchUp person, so I'm more of a pen and pencil kind of person, or pencil and paper kind of person, I guess. So I'm not really doing these in SketchUp. So I know I get requests sometimes to send me the SketchUp plan. Well, sorry folks, I don't have one. So, and then what I do after I make the front, and I decided to make a top view. Probably can't see real well, but this is the top, looking down through the top. I make myself a little sketch of what I want the top of the legs to look like, and then I do a sketch of one of the sides. Pretty much same on both sides, and then lastly I did a sketch of the back, and put some panel sizes on it, rail sizes, how far I want that rail up off the off the floor. So anyway, that was a process I go through when I get ready to do a project. So enough of that. Let's get on and see how I made this desk. The rough boards from the hardware dealer were about 11 and 12 foot long, so I used the miter saw to cut them down to a more manageable length. In addition to the hard maple, I needed some veneer, some miscellaneous pieces of plywood, and that was pretty much it for this project. Why I thought cutting 6/4 maple with a jigsaw was a good idea, I'll never know. It was a challenge. I'm speeding this up, I don't know, a lot, because it took me a long time to get through this board. I abandoned the jigsaw after this and went with the circular saw. It worked out a lot better and was a lot less time consuming. After cutting them to length, it was off to the joiner. So it took a few passes on the face to get it nice and flat. You do want to watch the grain direction on these so you don't get a lot of tear out. Once I got the face flat, I squared up one edge so that I wound up with one corner that was nice, square, and flat. Well, it took a little bit of work to get this thing squared up. So, Steve, how'd it come out? All right. Well, after getting both edges or both faces flat, it was off to the table saw to rip off the last rough edge. It's a lot of work working with rough stock, but I think it pays off in the end. I really enjoy it. Well, I've resawn the stock. Time to work on the legs. Here I'm putting a rabbet on one side. I've already made one pass through the dado blade, making the other. Clean that up. I left 1/4 inch on the face of that board, and when I put the other leg up there, which is 1/4 inch shorter than the front piece, then I wind up with a leg that's got two sides that are 2 inches, and it fits together real nice. I'm putting these frames together with loose tenon joinery, otherwise known as dominoes. I got a separate video on YouTube about that. So here I have one of the frames loosely fit together and clamped up, and I'm using a slot cutting bit to cut the groove for the plywood panel. It took a couple of passes, make one pass and then reset the bit, and then make another one until I get it to fit the size of the plywood. To veneer up the panels, I used a heavy-duty 3M contact cement. I sprayed some on the birch plywood panel and then some on it's paper-backed maple veneer. I let that dry for a little while. On the sides that were exposed, on the panels that were exposed, I veneered both sides. On the ones that can only be seen from one side, I just veneered the one side. So roll it out with a J roller and use a veneer saw to trim off the excess. The legs have a taper at the bottom on both sides, so I laid it out and just went to the bandsaw and cut outside my line and just trimmed off the excess on each part of the leg. Well, the next thing was to clean up those tapers. I'm just going to go ahead and do that with a block plane, and I'll plane down to my line and we'll be good to go. Time to put a panel together. I'm using liquid hide glue by Type Bond to give me a little longer open time on this, gluing this up, since there's quite a few things that need to be glued. So I used 2 dominoes per each rail. Just a matter of putting some glue in them, putting them together. It would have been nice if I could have got the thing in the shot there, but you get the idea. Anyway, I get that other style on, and I use a couple of spacers to keep the bottom rail at the same distance on all the panels. So I know that was kind of fast, but it's pretty much when you see one panel glued up, you've pretty much seen them all. I have the part of the case glued up. This case doesn't have a face frame, so there's only 3 sides on it. Using a flesh trim bit to kind of clean that joint up all between where the legs are glued together. It takes off any excess glue and makes sure everything's nice and flush. Because the case only has 3 sides, I need some cross braces to hold everything square and keep it all together. So yes, I'm using pocket screws. I know you either love them or you hate them, but in this particular case, for attaching a couple of cross braces that are never going to be seen, I think they work out pretty well. I'm putting on the cross pieces here. The top ones are not only going to be used to hold the case together, but I also drilled up through them to screw the top down to the case. So they're kind of a dual purpose piece there. So it worked out pretty well. The back panel is also connected with dominoes, so I needed to cut some mortises for those. So I'll use my router and my little jig that I made. Again, I have another video on out here on YouTube close to where this one is posted that shows the process, how I did that. It's just a matter of using a plunger router and an up cutting bit and plunge it until you get to the right depth, and then it works pretty good. So you can get your domino in there, and there you go. Here I have the case clamped up. I'm doing the same thing I did earlier. I'm cutting a slot for the plywood panel. This back panel is veneered on both sides, so the groove needs to be a little bit wider, but just a matter of resetting the slot cutting bit and getting it till it fits in the panel fits in the groove. Going through a dry fit of the case before we actually put some glue on it. Here I'm putting the cross pieces on. There's actually 4 cross pieces on the top here, as you see, and then there's 2 more on the bottom of the file cabinet piece. The veneer wasn't wide enough to do the back panel without having a seam, so here I'm just applying or gluing on a stile in the center. The stile is centered left to right on the back panel. Maple can be very blotchy when you stain it or dye it, so I like to pre-treat it with a product that I get from Charles Neal, who's a woodworker in Virginia. I'll put a link down below in the comments. It's really a 2-step process. You put on a pretty heavy coat, let it set for a minute, wipe it off, and then you put on another one after a couple hours, wipe it off, and then let it dry overnight. And it does a good job of preventing blotching on maple, cherry, and other blotch-prone woods. Olivia's mom wanted the desk to match some furniture she already has in her bedroom, so after a couple of sample boards, I determined that this combination would work best. It was 2 parts medium brown, 1 part dark brown, and 1 part vintage cherry. As you can see, they were all general finishes product, and it came out very close to what she wanted. It's been a while since I dyed a piece this big, and I forgot my number one rule of dyeing, which is don't stop when you start to put the dye on. Cover the entire surface, because dye does a couple things. Put one coat on, it's one thing. Put another coat on and it's twice as dark. So if you get any overlaps like I have in some of these parts here, it actually dyes it twice. So it took a little while, but I got this piece the way I wanted it. Everything else after this, I sprayed the dye on instead of wiping it on with a sponge, so that worked a lot better. It's finally time to glue this case together. I'm using hide glue again to give myself a little extra open time. It's a matter of putting some glue in the loose tendon joints and in the groove and putting everything together and clamping it up. So at this point in the project, I'm always happy to do a major glue up and all the parts come together so it actually looks like you're making something. So it was a challenge to get it glued up and keep everything square, but it came out really good. Time to make some drawers for this piece. Here I'm working on the center drawer. This is the side piece. On this particular joint I use a dado on the side piece, and then I cut a rabbet on the front piece that fits into that dado that I cut there. So here I'm cutting the rabbet. So in a minute here I'll show you what the final joint looks like. And here's how it goes together. Once it glued up, it made a very strong joint. A couple parts of the drawer fronts needed a 1/4 inch round over, so here I'm using the router table and a 1/4 inch round over bit to make that decorative feature on the front of the drawer. The drawer fronts are applied to the drawer boxes. Here I use the spacer to set the gap between the drawers. The boxes on these two drawers are made out of plywood just due to their size. The drawer front, once I get it set in the gaps I want, I just use a couple of clamps to hold it on place. The drawers are actually installed on full extension drawer slides. Once I got the drawer out, I pre-drilled for some wood screws. I put 4 1-inch screws in each drawer front. I used a jig by Craig to help me with these drawer slides. No, it's not a commercial for Craig. This is the first time I've used these type of slides, and I pretty much needed all the help I could get. So I found these, and they worked out. They worked out pretty well. It was a little difficult because a part of the case has a face frame, part doesn't. So it was kind of improvising as I went along. I put the front on the center drawer pretty much the same way, using some wood screws. This piece doesn't have any really decorative features to it. It's just pretty straight and square, so and it worked out pretty well. These slides are also soft close, as you can see here in a minute. The boards for the top were 8 and 9 inches wide and too wide for my joiner, so here I'm using a sled on the planer. I put a shim on the front corner of this piece, as you can see there, to keep it from rocking while I run it through the planer, and then once it got flat on one side, I took it off and put the flat side down and run it through the planer until I get the other side flat. This planer does two things well. It snipes and it makes a lot of noise, but even though it's old, it still works well. All right, here's the boards for my top laid out. One of the decisions I have to make is what order I want them to go in to get the best look, grain match between boards and whatnot. I got way more than I need. Let's see, the top is only 26 inches wide and this whole piece is a little over 33, so I got to take quite a bit off. I got this one in the back. I figure this is the front board, this would be the back. I'm not thrilled with this stripe that's in that piece right there, so I think if I trim it off, I mean I only need a couple inches of this board, so I can probably cut most of that off, but it goes all the way through to the other side, so I can't flip it over. So what I'm going to do is do some more trimming on these boards. I think I'll take a little bit off each one to shrink it up a little bit and then measure it out, and then I'll cut that last piece there. So once I get that done, I'll go ahead and, while I got it here, I'm going to lay it out with a cabinet maker's triangle so I remember what order they go in. So I do that, and then I said, well, trim off a little bit more, joint the edges between these boards, and then cut this last one to a little oversized. I'll probably wind up with a finished piece somewhere around 27, and then I can trim it up if I need it. So I'm shooting for a 26-inch wide top. So, all right, so it's back to the saw and the joiner. I thought about using dominoes when I was putting the top together, but I went ahead and just used some biscuits. The purpose really to keep the boards aligned during glue up. So biscuits would work fine. I use Tight Bond Ultimate to glue the top up. That's if I can get the gunk off the end of the bottle, I'll use it. So it is pretty straightforward. A matter of putting the glue on the pieces, putting the biscuits in, glue them together. I glued the top up in two halves, and then I glued the two halves together. I let the glue set up till it got kind of gummy, and then I scraped it off with a chisel versus wait until it dried hard, then trying to sand it or scrape it off and take a chance of getting some tear out that way. So overall, the glue up went pretty well. Once the glue dried, I sanded the top up to 120. Here I'm just making a final pass through the saw to get the top down to final width. To trim the top to length, I first squared a line across the end and used a jigsaw to cut off the excess, and then used a router with a flush trim bit to clean that edge up. I actually should have clamped this down to something so it didn't keep moving, but I eventually got it. So, and then the router did a good job of cleaning up the end grain. Of course, it required a lot of sanding, but overall it worked pretty well. I put a 3/8 inch round over on the top of this desk, and then on the bottom of the top I put a 1/4 inch round over. I only put the round overs on the front and ends of the piece. I sprayed this piece with several coats of satin lacquer. Of course, it was windy the day that I wanted to spray it, so I have a canopy set up with some windshields, and the case fit underneath the canopy, but there wasn't a lot of room for filming, so I'm just showing here. I sprayed the drawer fronts. I used an Erlex 5500. Overall, the finish came out very nice. All right, well, that's how I made Olivia's desk. I thank you for watching. Well, I also thank all my subscribers. I appreciate it very much when people subscribe to my channel. I also appreciate comments. So you have comments down below. Please leave them, and I'll be happy to get back to you as soon as I can on those. Again, thanks for watching. I'll put some pictures up at the end. And remember, sawdust is man glitter. Thanks for watching.